Welcome everyone to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. Happy Thursday. I know it's a Thursday, not our usual Tuesday, but today I am happy to have Tamara here. She is a graduate of Academic Life Coaching 1.0 in California. She has a specialty in mindfulness and working with teenagers, and her website is flutterspace.co. And welcome, Tamara, to the Coaching to Flourish podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And please feel free to call me Tammy.
Tammy.
So, yeah.
Okay. I love it. So, so Tammy, when you were in, when did you first hear about life coaching, and what was your honest first response to hearing the words life coach?
Well, so I'm pretty new to the life coaching scene because, quite honestly, what I thought of it was that it was this really gimmicky business that is all about shirts that say positive vibes only and no bad days and things like that, and really more fluff than heat and heart. And so that was my original impression until I realized I'm also a high school teacher, and until I realized what I loved most about high school is connecting with my students. And I've been a teacher since 2004, and I found that what I love most about it is that life connection. And then throughout the years, I said, hey, you know what? It's hard as a public school teacher in a class of 30 to 40 to make those personal connections. And then that's when I really started focusing and listening on how can I expand on what I love about teaching through possibly coaching. What is coaching? So I'm pretty new to it.
And what do you teach in high school?
So my credential's in Espanol, even though I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I am a borrower of the language and love to learn it. Mm-hmm.
So Spanish, mindfulness, and you had some award or some accomplishment, I think we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So, I'm proud to say, I also wanted to mention, I think I cut out, that I also teach a college prep program called AVID, which stands for Advancement Via Individual Determination. And that's where I cut out. And so I co-developed a mindfulness class at our high school in California. And we were lucky to receive a grant from the state to do that. And to our knowledge, we are one of the first, if not the first, school in California to have a year-long UC-approved mindfulness elective, and it is a badge of honor, in my opinion.
That's amazing! Congratulations!
Thank you. Thank you.
So what was the prompt to that? Like, what was the thing, the moment you made the decision? Yes, this is something that needs to happen.
So I was asked to be a part of it and co-develop it because our community that I teach in is a pretty high achieving community, and the stress levels are through the roof for, pressure to succeed. And, obviously this can lead into coaching really well, but in general, those pressures our teens are facing are due to the fact that they feel as though success means a certain thing. So we, as a staff, decided, what kind of programs do we need in our school to support our students? And mindfulness was brought up by our department leads as a class that our students could benefit from taking. And so then I was asked to be a part of the process.
That's so awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so how is the program going now? Like what have you learned in the process? Like what has been surprising about it?
Our program is young. It's 3 years old. So our first year in the program was grant funded. And so this is our second year of the class, and it's great. It's an elective class. So kids want to be there. And it's a morning class. So it's a great way for students to start their intentions. And a lot of the stuff that I learned in our coaching classes through Coach Training EDU is something that I can use in our mindfulness class. So I know that a big part of your program is to hopefully expand this into schools one day. And my mindfulness class is a great place to explore things like inner critic and future self and all that kind of stuff. So we're growing. We continue I have students, I have a great leadership team who runs our Instagram account and who tries to continue to put the word out, because there are still a lot of misconceptions surrounding mindfulness and the secularity in it, and just kind of like the mysticism around it. So
right. Yeah, it's solidly grounded in positive psychology. I mean, the studies are robust, endless, and why not throw a little woo-woo in there too? Like, a little woo-woo never hurt anybody, but it's also a thing that you have to be mindful of in certain places.
definitely.
There's an element of coaching that I think is moving, I mean, more towards this, even in the executive world, where they're asking questions like, so what is the energy that we want to put out there? Like, what is the energetic feel that we're going for? That's very much a part of marketing, in this new age. What is the you're talking about your background. I'd love to hear where you're from, how you grew up, and how it influences you today.
Yeah. Well, I'm born and raised in New Jersey, and I moved out to California at 24. I'm 38 now, so I've been out here for quite a while. And I'm a product of immigrant parents, and it's a huge part of my story. Very much complicated part of my story also, and a lot of the way I try to connect with my students too, whether or not I express that outwardly in the classroom. It's a way in which I find connection. So if anybody, if you know people who are products of immigrants, there's a lot of complexities there. There's identity problems and curiosities. And for me, my parents were both born in Belarus. They were born in Belarus at the end of World War II. So they made the journey. They did the whole thing on a boat coming to the United States at the end of the war. Just living in fear and in poverty and refugee camps. So they had me, and I full on identify as an American. I've got blonde hair and blue eyes. I have this sort of like American vibe towards me, but I'm very much rooted in this culture that my parents are bringing me up as Belarusian. And that created a lot of confusion immediately, actually, even in terms of my name. So it's interesting because anybody in my family, if you talk to, they call me Tamara. My name is Tamara. But when I make doctor's appointments, when I meet people for the first time and they see my name on paper, the question I get, is it Tamara? Is it Tamara? And in my head, I want to be like, it's neither, it's Tamara. But then that creates a whole story. I remember being in kindergarten and people would call me tomato or see you tomorrow. And it was funny for them, but it was hard for me. And that identity, so actually on my website and my intro to who I am and who I am as a coach, my name is my first story. And I remember being in kindergarten, and I remember being so uncomfortable about my identity. So I said, forget it, just call me Tammy. And I go by Tammy. And so I kind of have this like, am I Tamara? Am I Tamara? Am I Tamara? Am I Tammy? And it's a lot of working through yourself. So that's one example of how I think that finding one's identity, especially as a preteen and as a teen, is something that's really deliberate and doesn't just happen. You have to work towards it. So that really influences the way in which I coach.
Wow. What was the move from Jersey to California like?
It was fun. And if you would have asked me 14 or so years ago if I would still be out here, I would have said no. I moved out here at the time. He was then my boyfriend, Tom, now my husband. We went to Rutgers together at college, and we were dating, and he got into film school at UCLA, and we were dating, and I'm a teacher, so I could have had a job anywhere. So we made this move. We packed up my Honda Civic, my 2004 Honda Civic hybrid, got a shell on the top of it from Craigslist, and drove across the country, spending time in national parks. And I remember showing up to school a week before the first day of school, and my principal was calling me the entire time, the whole summer, like, are you coming out here? Like, are you sure you're going to be here? And I was like, I'm going to come, I promise. And even the process of finding a job was that we knew Tom was going to go to UCLA. So we found a 15-mile radius, and I applied to any schools that had openings in those 15-mile radiuses, radii, I don't know, and however you say it. And I got a job and I took it, and we've just been planting our roots here ever since.
Wow. Wow, that is so similar to most of my story
Oh,
about
really?
us. Oh, totally. Like college sweethearts, cross-country trip, making plans for it, and we end up being in Oregon, you know.
Oh, wow.
I got a teaching job teaching Latin at the local high school. And yeah, yeah.
That's cool. How long have
So
you been in
similar.
Oregon
So
for?
what was that?
How long have you been in Oregon for then?
Since 2003. Yeah, since like right after college.
Yeah,
And
funny.
yeah, I think I now consider myself an Oregonian, even though I grew up in Pittsburgh, which I also consider myself a Pittsburghian, but I mean, yeah, it's not that bad.
Right.
That's amazing. So you're still in Los Angeles then?
Yeah, I live in the South Bay, Redondo Beach.
Yeah.
So greater LA area.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. And you definitely have that school teacher, like know how to tell a story, put together, like, cause those are good stories. Like I mean, the thing I love most about teaching is I have a captive audience where I get to tell my stories day after day.
Mm-hmm.
What's the unexpected thing that you love most about teaching?
I love how people show up differently
Mm.
when I look at teaching. I think that what's so fun is to see real feedback in real time and take that. So I look at myself as like a vessel to my kids' learning. I don't look at myself as someone who's got all the answers. Like if my students are telling me like this is totally confusing, then I need to take that feedback and I learn from that. So my biggest, most love of teaching is being able to have those real-time, authentic feedback conversations. And I think a lot of times I notice as a public education teacher that sometimes our students are a little bit, not a little, but quite a lot on autopilot and are sometimes robotic in the way they go about their education experience. And so I like to unravel that. And I like to be like, okay, well, how do you take an active role? And it really goes against the grain of teaching because I'm not providing them with the answers. Just like as in coaching, like they're the experts of their learning. I'm providing them with the opportunity to be those experts.
Totally. I mean, as a fellow language teacher, because we're both in the languages,
Yeah.
I feel like I remember those staff meetings, we get together as language teachers and have a chat. And one thing that really struck me was how when a student goes to school, language teachers, one of the few teachers that they'll have all 4 years in the same, so we get to see students grow up. And I feel like the language teachers are this, I don't know, like unofficial, like shepherd of like their develop, we get a front row seat to see them change through years and the develop.
Totally.
Amazing.
And it's fun to see, and it's fun to see kids in the hall who I have taught maybe 2 years ago, who I know are still in Spanish. And then I can increase my conversations with them and see just how mature they are. But I also get that experience as an avid teacher. I have my kids as a cohort from freshman to senior year, and they're juniors this year. So I've seen them, they're now turning 17. And they came into my class when they were 14. And it's pretty unbelievable to see how they're becoming their own little selves.
Mm-hmm. Same thing as coaches too. Like as a coach with high school, working with middle school, high school students, you get to see them usually for lengths of time. And I would meet with students, do the 10-session course, and then about half of them would want to continue, but we would just space them out differently. And we just cycle through the program. Just sometimes I meet once a month. What's it like as a coach? You're building your client base. You have paying clients. Like what was that journey like from training to getting paid?
Well, during my training process, so when I was in the 1.0 class, I used it as an opportunity to consider what I wanted to do as a coach and what my niche was, right? And I knew it was going to be teens. And I know that in our virtual, I was in the class when COVID started. So I was in the January cohort. We started in January, ended in July. So we went through the intense quarantine together. And that was a really interesting process in and of itself. But what bubbled to the top was how virtual learning and the virtual world was everything. So I wanted to build a website. That was my biggest goal, was to get the information, but also be able to present myself in a way that I could reach people virtually and be able to coach that way. So the move really, again, going back to what I said about teaching, value those relationships and the relationships I've made with parents and students and in the community. And I like to talk about my personal self, and the community. Some people in the community know that I love to coach, and that's a passion I want to build. And so people just kind of have reached out to me on their own, like, hey, we know somebody, and then that person knows somebody. And again, I'm building my clientele. I've got, 2 to 3 people at any given time. But to me, it's the word of mouth that is helping me build my business.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah. And I think a lot of teachers have that advantage too, because you're connected in some way to students. You have there are parent networks that are so established that once one parent gets word of it, it's almost like they are the most connected group of people on the planet.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah. I found that the referrals, and the referrals come to you like already, they just want to, is there space? Like, they're already there. It's just a lot more efficient. What would be your advice to, before that, like, what was your favorite life coaching tool?
Oh, I love the inner critic tool. That is my favorite. I think that is they're all universal, but to me, that's like moving past just like who I want to be in the next couple months to like, what do I need to work through in order to get to who I want to be?
What's your core motivation type?
I'm a type 1.
Okay.
Like heavily too. I took the enneagram myself. Okay. I offer the enneagram as part of my package to teens. So when they sign on with me, they take the enneagram right away, and we use that as a tool to refer to. And so I am a 1. Like a lot of my points went to 1.
All right. What's your what did you find you have to work through or had to work through as a 1? And like, what advice would you give to other 1s? Like, to all the perfectionists out there?
Yeah. I think I need to be a little softer. I need to soften up a little bit and maybe lighten up sometimes. So I think that what drives me is making change. Like I like to consider myself a change agent to a certain extent. But sometimes there's a time to play, and I could really use a little more playtime in my life. And my biggest advice to other 1s is to figure out how to include that playtime in your life.
I'm just there, the core motivation enneagram, it goes so deep. Like there's so many levels to it. Like where, when do you know as a 1, like when do you know you're on that path to personal growth versus, no, this is the same cycle?
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and my husband's been forwarding me some of these YouTube videos he watches, and one really piqued my interest lately. I wrote it down actually because I wanted to make sure I cited it correctly, and the teacher in me needs to be able to cite my source. But there's a YouTube video by Richard. It's a TED Talk on Richard. His name is Richard J. Davidson. He's a neuroscientist, and he goes through this video about like 4 emotional societal deficits, and then what we can do to counter those deficits.
That's awesome.
So I think that as a
I
one,
know this too, yeah.
so I think that as a one, it's about moving towards, for me, it's about purpose. If I don't feel as though there's a purpose to why I'm doing something, then it's a sideways move in my life. It's not a moving forward. So I really measure like, okay, well, where's the purpose coming from? If I find that gives me meaning, then I know I'm moving forward and I'm working through what I need to do. If I find like this is just kind of occupying my time, then maybe I could put my chips in a better place.
Yeah, there's an interesting play between external and internal, like external reference and internal reference. Like what are signals from the outside world that yes, you're on the path? And then what are signals from the inside world that you're on the path? Like, how do you know, like,
Ooh.
yeah, go for it.
Oh, this is a little coaching. You're
I know,
you're
I can't help
putting
it.
me in
I'm
the
just like, I
quiet
want to
role.
know. This is where my curiosity goes. I was thinking before this one, I want to know if I can go coachy in the interview and how they'll respond, you know?
Yeah.
So at any point in time, if you're like, hey, John, let's go towards this direction, totally cool. But if you're game, I'm curious
Yeah.
because here's where I'm coming from with this too. I feel like as a fellow educator, we see what's happening in the education system.
Right.
And so often our education system is totally designed for an external awareness of the world. But I feel like as coaches, what we're doing is we're getting an internal awareness. We're
Yeah.
building that internal world. And there's not a lot of maps of this internal world for teens, for teenagers, for this kind of thing. So we don't know how to do it well as
Yeah.
people. It feels like uncomfortable, like, ooh, is this coachy or not? But in a safe space, oh my goodness, it's like we get to explore.
Mm-hmm.
My latest insight on this, yeah, go for it. Go for it, Tammy.
No. Continue.
Okay, but the thing I've been playing with lately is this idea of putting an effort to change the world, but not for the sake of yourself being like, oh, I feel good when my life is meaningful, and that does feel good, and I go in there too, but it's to change yourself for the sake of the world. And I've been playing with this idea that it's the work that we choose to do, like what you're talking about, like with your work with Avid, with your work with coaching, with your work with youth transformation, like what you're doing with your coaching business. It's making yourself the best coach you could be for the benefit of others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's like an inward focus. And so that's when I'm hearing you talk about like where you're at, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what you're saying is exactly what it fits into some of these ideas I've been playing with.
Right. I mean, I think it comes down to the word practice. I look at it like a practice. It's a practice, and I preach this to my mindfulness kids all the time, and I follow this. Like, it's practicing your purpose, your intentions, your awareness is like any other physical practice you would do, but for your brain, right? And it's about coming back to it, and it's about being like, okay, I'm noticing that by 2 p.m. every day, I've got a raging headache and I'm tired, and I think I need to refine my practice. Like, where do I have to go to my practice? What do I have to look at? And for me, that comes through the practice, a lot of yoga and a lot of moving meditation. That's where I find a lot of my answers. And that looks different for everybody. Not everybody has to practice yoga, right? That's just an example. But to me, it comes down to looking at it as a practice. As life is a practice, it's something we're not going to perfect. There's no perfection to it. And if we're not deliberate in making choices and then having this little dance between, okay, that wasn't the right thing, but that's okay because not everything is right, and then I'm going to make another choice.
I mean, that's the ability to unhook, from expectation or from judgment, that I
Oh, but
feel
that's
like.
so hard. It's so hard. It's hard for all of us.
What's your tips? How do you, I feel like, core
Yeah.
motivation, enneagram type ones. I mean, this core, I feel like your experiences can be really helpful. What
Yeah.
advice for others how do you unhook?
I think that creating a schedule, a system in which you have at least 30 minutes a day to do something for yourself, whether it's like just going out to the grocery store or going on a walk or exercising, creating the space for that, as well as sitting down for one meal a day without a distraction will provide space for you to learn what's really going on inside your body and become a friend to yourself. So I find that the systems that like, I find that just starting with that will probably let you listen to your body and your mind a little more, so that way you can soften up a little bit.
That's wild that our society is so busy that this is the advice. Like,
Yeah.
this is
right.
what you need to do.
It's hard. I mean, and honestly, it's pretty new practice for me. The eating without distractions is new for me. So I've been doing this for about 2 weeks, where I'm like, one meal a day. I'm not going to walk around and eat my breakfast. I'm not going to put on TV. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm just going to sit and eat. And it is tough. That is hard to do.
That's awesome. I mean, these devices are designed to be like so gluey, they're just suck energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, so where do you, given your experience as an educator, knowing what life coaching is about, I think, yes, coaching is definitely the future of education. How do you see, what's the next step? How do you see where's the next step of education going towards that direct? How do you see it playing out?
I love that the word SEL is now becoming mainstream in education, that social emotional learning component. I love that. I think that it is about time. It's about time. And, it starts, God, I mean, if we're going to talk about the system needs to be able to change to support that, right? To be able to have built-in support for teachers. It starts with the teachers. It starts with the educators, right? Whoever you are, if you're a counselor or, an office assistant or whoever, it starts with that person to be able to look up and say, hi, how are you today? And be able to be okay with themselves. So I think that the real future of education is that the educators become a little more, technology is amazing, but it's not everything. Like that human connection, even if it's a virtual human connection, sometimes is as good as the most amazing PowerPoint presentation. And I'm not saying that's all it needs to be, but there can be a balance. And I see that social emotional learning piece now becoming, especially, I have 2 elementary school kids, one in 4th grade and one in 1st grade. And I see that those elementary school teachers, major props to them, because they are just a different breed of people. And they start every morning with a basic conversation, like a check-in. And I think that it's those small things that I'm starting to see.
Right.
But I think we have a lot of work to do too. There's a lot of work as a society and as a public education system to get those supports so that every kid has access to it.
It will be interesting to see how this experiment, the remote experience, changes education. Does it snap back? I think in large part it will, but there will be some things have fundamentally changed. With homeschooling, there are so many people who've been exposed to it now. Mm-hmm. There will be a percentage who stay.
Right.
I feel like education, the knowledge, the transfer of knowledge, it will become even easier, but the social emotional learning is not, that's something that is going to be, I think, more highly valued in person, where we're going to see more leadership camps. We're going to see more leadership courses, and have those courses be the foundation for all the others. Mm-hmm. When you look back at the way I think education did evolve, their current state, it was educators asking the business world, okay, so what kind of student do you need? like who do you produce? And I feel like that's happening again, where I feel like corporations now are emphasizing a lot of this, they call them soft skills, but they're placing more importance on them. And the companies who are doing that are getting ahead, and the companies that are falling behind. And there's this, culture is moving forward, in very deep ways on all fronts. Tammy, how can people know about you? Like, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you? And we have a Q&A too. Oh, this is good.
Oh, awesome. What do we have?
We'll get there, but let's do the best way to connect, and then let's go for some questions.
Sure. Can I put into the chat? I don't know who's here and who's not. My Instagram account is Flutterspace, and my website is also flutterspace.co, and my contact information is there. And honestly, I think that it's easy to connect basically anyway. And if the things that I say, I'm not, the beautiful thing about coaching is that there's a coach for everybody. And I find that asking teens, especially, to, oh, yay, teens together, that sounds great, I'd love to hear more about it. Teens need these connections, especially now in this, in this AVID program that I teach, a lot of it is about leadership, and they need to find leadership opportunities. And they're like, well, how do I find a leadership opportunity right now? How do I build my resume? I don't know how am I supposed to do this? And so these kind of connections that our young adults need are, really essential to their growth as from teenagers to young adults. How are they going to get the life experience through just a screen, and teaching in this environment that doesn't really produce what they want to do? So that sounds cool. I'll check it out.
It's I think when we get back, my hope is that education will adopt more of a leadership approach to like human development. I think that's where this is all going, where education's focusing.
Yeah, if you have, Rashmi, if you have any kind of a website or anything about your Teens Together program, that would be kind of cool if you could share that. I'd be interested. I do too, but honestly, John, I think that that's still kind of like against the cultural norm. I think that we're just at the beginning of this, and coaching is a great pair to teaching, but I do still think it's very early in this development.
Oh, yeah, I feel like we're still going to be talking about this. I think this will still be in this space at least 10 years from now, but 20 years from now, I think what will happen is every single teacher will also be required to have an academic life coaching certificate. Like, that is what is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I mean, even some, I think the other way I think this is going to play out is there's going to be some country that has an education minister or a leader in education really high up that says, you know what, let's just do this. Let's add this one certificate for all the teachers, and then we're going to have a whole country move in this direction. I mean, I've been talking to some of these people, like some of them, people connected to ministers of education in different, like far, far away places, because they, one country is going to do this, or a state might do this. I know that we're talking to, people in Oklahoma, and okay, so like, are we doing this, or is there going to be a state that takes the leap?
Yeah.
And then at that point in time, I think we're going to see the system fundamentally change on a very vast, deep, quick level. I think that will happen in 10 years. One of those scenarios will play out.
Yeah, even the way teacher training programs, I think, are going to start training their teachers. I agree with you 100%. The shift of the youth, the people who are who wants to be a teacher now? Like, why would you want to be a teacher, John? What is the motivation? We're talking about core motivation. Where's the motivation? So going back to that with the youth, the people who want to teach kids, like, I think that there's a huge shift towards that, definitely with the young people.
Right. Yeah. I think teachers go into teaching because they love connecting with people and seeing them grow And it's like, yeah, I mean, especially middle school teachers. I mean, talk about
Yeah, I know.
states of the world. You know? Oh,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, it's amazing to see how, where these, how big of a role teachers can play. Well, all right, so we have to end at some point.
okay.
I feel like we could go on for hours
Yeah.
talking education and coaching.
Totally. I mean,
Yes.
yes, I'm right there with you.
And I mean, I love the feeling of, yeah, Rashmi. I mean, once you face a room full of like 12 and 13-year-olds, like,
All bets are off. Like they sniff you out. I mean, teens do too, but middle schoolers have a special way.
Yeah, it's like all of you will find buttons you never knew existed. Like, whoa, wow, I can't believe that got me. Wow, that's an interesting one. All right. Gotta sit down with this.
Yeah.
It's just, I love it. I love it. And then you get to see people grow. I mean, it's a remarkable thing. Where's I going? Oh, I forgot.
That's okay.
Talking about
What were we talking about? The future of education.
Oh man.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think just, from what I've seen is, it'll come back to me probably as soon as this ends. Tammy, it's really fun. We'll get you back and talking about this stuff again. Thank you for being on the
Thanks
podcast.
For having me. Thank you so much. And I didn't know anyone else was here with us, so I'm glad Rashmi's here and whoever else. I thought it was just you and I.
Oh,
no, I see.
I'm sorry. No, we have a live audience.
Yeah, no, I know, but I didn't see anybody at the time that was there. So this is great. And, thank you for building this program. It's really cool. It's been a really cool thing to be a part of. I learned a lot, and I just feel like you guys are doing great stuff. So thanks for all the space that you guys create.
Yeah. And thank you. And thanks, community, listening here live and those listening at the podcast afterwards. I mean, it feels like, I just was telling the leadership team this morning, it's amazing to see something that you dreamt of for so long. Like, what if this could change education, right? Mm-hmm. And something that you dream, you work towards, and then you see it, and then you start to see tangible evidence, like it's working. Like you in this program, you're taking these concepts and working with whole groups of students, like it's happening. And to see tangible things like that happening, especially when there's so much challenge in the world, gives so much meaning to this work that I feel so humble and grateful, and just almost just like complete gratitude to be able to do work that I know has meaning. And that feels like, even this conversation is just like fired me. Like, it's I think about these things a lot, but it's one thing to say them out loud and hear it and be like, yes, like we're there. But I think we are getting where we need to go. In terms
even the resiliency piece and the gratitude, what you were just saying, like, for example, I'm showing my kids a new platform to go on, and it took 2 full class periods of all of us stumbling through it. And it was uncomfortable and it was difficult, but I was like, we're not giving up, guys. Like, and we all did it. And that resiliency, that gratitude, we were like, yes, this feels so good. Let's just pause for a moment and be thankful that we just did even one little thing, which is, when you sign on to a new platform, the email goes to the junk folder. You can't find it. Nothing is easy. And these kinds of things that coaching provides give people the tools to not just give up and be like, okay, forget it. I'm not going to use this because it's too difficult. Like, we need to persevere in these cases.
Absolutely. It's that inner world. It's that exploration of the inner world. That's that's the next frontier of education. So welcome to the game.
I'm there with you.
Welcome to the game. So thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure. Tammy, we'll have a link to your website in the blog post on Coach Training EDU blog. Thank you, community. I'll see you next week.
See ya. Thank you.